This is not just a story about drugs. It is a story about systems, about power, policy, and the persistent criminalization of black motherhood in America. From the early 1980s through the 1990s, black communities across the United States were devastated by the crack cocaine epidemic. And at the center of this violence were black women, especially black mothers and pregnant black women whose bodies, wombs, and families became the battlegrounds of a racist war on drugs. While crack cocaine use occurred across all races, it was black women who were disproportionately pathologized, prosecuted, and imprisoned. Behind every statistic is a story of mothers separated from their children, of generations of trauma, of communities dismantled by incarceration and surveillance. These women were not just victims of addiction, they were victims of systemic neglect, racial terror, and a medical and legal system that deemed them disposable. We call this what it truly was, the criminalization of black motherhood. We seek to tell their stories uncensored, unfiltered, and unforgotten.
My name is Sherry Tyler, and I am the sister-in-law of Tremayne Tyler.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about your life, your story? Where are you from, and what was life like for you in your community prior to the crack era and the crack epidemic?
Okay, so I grew up in Chester Township, Chester, Pennsylvania, and the projects that I grew up in was called the Fairground Projects. Very loving, very loving. Every time I think about it, I choke up. Grown-ups were allowed to chastise us, and it was just loving. It was just loving, neighborly. I remember neighbors would knock on my mom's door and ask to borrow a cup of sugar, stuff like that. Things that you don't hear now. It was just good. My mom was on welfare. My dad always worked. He was always in my life. We grew up with the surplus cheese and all that good stuff. My mom was a great cook. She sold chicken dinners and candy and liquor and cigarettes. She sold all that stuff. And it was just a great time. It was a fun time growing up. My grandma kept us in church. I remember saying that I didn't want to go to church. And she said, I don't remember asking you. So church was the thing. Sunday mornings we had to go to church. But I can honestly say that growing up was good. We had a tragic in our family in the 60s. I'm the only girl. I had 4 brothers. And going to the movies, one day we just took a different way. And we went across the tracks. And so the train hit 2 of my brothers and killed them. And after the train passed us, this man, I don't know who he was, he just caught me. And when he caught me, I took off running. And so that, to me, that's far back as I could remember alcoholism in my family, the drinking. Both of my parents drank. My dad always went to work though, but my mom drank. And after the accident, she really drank. She drank and she cried every day about her 2 boys. And so my grandmom had us. She lived a couple doors from us. So we were like back and forth, moms, grandmoms. But that began a lot of trauma in my life. In the 60s, I don't know if help was available, but it surely wasn't offered to my mom or us. I'm not saying it wasn't available, but it was not offered to us. Something should have been offered for us. We were traumatized. Life was just starting to get hard. After the accident, that's when things started to take off. So, we getting older. My parents, they still drinking. So we going back and forth with my grandma. And I thank God that we had a grandma that stepped in. I really do.
How old were you when your brothers were killed?
8.
So I was 8.
8 years old when it happened. And one was 9, one was 10, and the youngest one passed away. And the oldest one passed away. And so, and that middle brother that survived, he drank as hard as my mom. He actually drank with my mother. So alcoholism was running rapid. Matter of fact, both sides of my family were struck with this disease of alcoholism. Both sides, my dad's side and my mom's side. So, yeah, growing up it was good, even after the tragic. I went to school and I did pretty good in school, graduated, and even through all of that, we still had what we wanted. My dad took care of us. I had everything that I was supposed to have. A yearbook, graduation ring, all that. Everything I was supposed to have in high school, and but we didn't have our parents because of alcoholism. I had dreams. I always wanted to go to Howard University. That was my dream. I graduated, and the next year I was pregnant with my daughter. And so 1974, I had my first daughter. I always worked. And I started working in the bars. I didn't even like alcohol. Because I seen what it did to my parents. I didn't even like it, the taste of it or anything. And I started working in the bars. And the progression in the 70s, the progression was starting to set in, but I didn't see it because I was right in the middle of it. So, 77, I had my second child, I had my son. And I married his father. My first husband stayed in jail. Yeah, he was a good guy, but he just stayed in jail. He had no sense of direction. But the 80s for me was a total wipeout. 1984, I had my last child, and I was introduced to cocaine by a family member. And the first time I touched it, it took me down the first time I touched it. By this time, my mom had stopped drinking. Thank God, my mom had stopped drinking. And so I started to chase. I started to chase that white powder. I started to chase it. And by this time, my kids were getting older. My youngest daughter, she was 6 months when my addiction took off. I would sell food stamps. I actually would sell the food stamps to my mother. And later on at night, when everything was gone, I would go back and get them. And she would say, here, take them. Just go ahead and take them. And I used to always think that my mother was supporting my habit. My mother loved me. She loved me. That's what that was all about. So eventually, my mom came in the house and she took the kids. She took them. She said, you go ahead about your business. And she took all 3 of my children. And I just thank God. And it was like a pattern. I believe today that my mother saw herself in me. I do believe that. Because I always thought my mom hated me and didn't like me. And I believe she saw the pattern in me with the life that she lived. And she just wanted better for me, that's all. So she took the kids. And so I was a free spirit. And I ripped and ran for 10 years. Periodically, she would come look for me. And I would hide when I seen her, because she had the children with her. So, 10 years. For 10 years, I was stuck. Drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, people, places, and things. And I went up and down state line. I think the furthest I ended up was Hattie Grace, Maryland. But one thing I always did, I always called my mother and told her where I was at. And I need to say that people in addiction, they don't want to be like that. I'm talking about me now. They don't want to be like that. I didn't know it was a way out. I really didn't. I didn't know it was a way out because I used to stay at this girl's house, and all I gave her was food stamps to stay there because she had the crack house. And so I had a box in the corner, and I had all three of my kids' picture on this box. And I would sit there and watch them, and I would cry. But the minute somebody would come in, or the minute I would go get high, it'd all go away. And they was like, you was just crying about these kids 5 minutes ago. That's the power of this addiction. That's the power in it. So I really didn't know it was a way out, because when I come down, I would just go back up. And I was ashamed of the way I was living. I wasn't raised like that. I walked around a lot with my head down. I hung around with people that was doing exactly what I was doing. Same thing I was doing. And so I continued that vicious cycle for 10 years. From 1985 to 1995. A lot of things happened during that course. I've seen a lot. I've seen people get murdered. I've been standing there when people got murdered. I've been in houses where people have jumped out the windows. I've been in houses where they got raided. But for the grace of God. But for the grace of God. Yeah.
What did it look like when you were at your lowest moment? What was that like? Moments.
My lowest moments. My lowest moments were Sundays. Sundays, I seen everybody going to church, and I knew my grandma was in the church, and my dad worked at Congolian down here on 9th Street. It's a rug plant called Congolians. And the mornings was so tough for me because I knew I would see people. And I didn't want them to see me because I'd be up all night and my clothes was dirty. But the lowest points was definitely Sundays when I knew where everybody was at. And holidays, oh my goodness. Holidays was the worst. I was around a group of people, and I was in another project, and I had got stuck in this project, and I was around a group of people, and I never forget this girl. Her name is, she's passed now, so I'm gonna say her name's Naima. She said, "Where you from?" She said, "You've been down here with us for so long. Where you from?" You know, and that's what I would do. I would go places and run with people that was doing what I was doing, and I would just stay. You know, use your bathroom, steal your toilet paper. And people was literally saying, "Don't let her in here. Don't let her in here." You know, I stole from my mother. I stole from my mother, and I'm not proud to say that. Every time I would get tired, one of them low points, I would get tired. And I would go to my mom's. They were so happy. My kids was jumping all on me. So happy to see me. And my mom said, "Take those clothes off, go take a bath," and she would have food ready for me. And every time I did that, I stole her wallet. Every single time. I'm not proud to say that. Actually, it was the worst high in my life, because the whole time I'm getting high, I'm peeping out the windows to see if anybody looking for me. So it was a horrible, horrible time to get high, stealing from my mother. But for the grace of God, here I sit here. I sit here. I sit here. Clean and sober. I have a sobriety date, and I'm going to mention it because I'm proud of it. I got clean and sober July 22nd, 1995. Today is May the 5th, 2025. So if the creek don't rise, I'm going to have 30 years sobriety in a couple months. So,
talking about the children, you said they were there with you and they saw things. Talk a little bit about your relationship with your children, what it was like.
My children love me in spite of the exact same way we loved our mom. My mom could do no wrong. I used to go to the bars and get my mother, and she would start fights, and we would go in there fighting. And I'm telling you, I was just like my mom. But my kids love me in spite of. All they wanted was their mom. And I can remember one night, my brother was at my house, and he had a lot of illegal stuff on him. And the cops raided my house twice. They was looking for dealers, because I would let people come in my house and bag up their drugs and stuff, because they would give me free stuff. And so and every house that I lose, my mother would get me another one. She was very well known in the projects. But this one particular night, the police came in, and when they came in, they went, this is how well I was known in the projects. They came in and they shut the bedroom door to my kids' room. And they had just missed the people that they was looking for. And so there was nothing there. There was nothing there except for paraphernalia. You know, I'm using, so I had paraphernalia. So they carted me off to jail, and I ended up staying a weekend. And so Monday morning, my parents got me out. They dropped the charges because they didn't have nothing on me. And they did that again. They did it twice. And then the second time they did it, my parents, they just left me in there. But I only stayed for like not even a week. Not even a week. But my kids was in the room. And my oldest daughter, I talked to her a lot. Yeah, they heard that. They saw a lot. And they heard it because I never locked the front door of my house. It was like a revolving door. So people could come in and do what they wanted, you know. And yeah, my kids was right there. But I could share one thing. Wow. My son. I lost my son. He's been gone for 17 years now. And he got murdered in Delaware, and I was 13 years clean and sober then. But I just thank God that I was clean and sober, that they didn't have to come look for me. Because I was with my son right before he got murdered. But my son, in my addiction, I had wandered off up to where my mom lived. And I was dirty. And my son was shooting crap. And I could hear the guys in a circle. His name was Amin. And I could hear him saying, Amin, here come your mom. Right? And he stood up. And the look on his face, I will never forget the look on his face. He was so embarrassed of the way that I was looking. And I'm almost sure I begged him for money. And I'm almost sure he gave it to me to get me away from him. But one of the things that made me want to get clean and sober was the look on his face. I never wanted to see that look. I never wanted to see that look again. And my dad had a look on his face too. My dad used to go in this bar. It's called the 501 bar. And I went in this bar one day and I told my dad that I had a prescription at Rite Aid. And I needed $20. I had a scarf on my head. And so I hadn't been to the doctor in years. My dad looked at me. Of course he gave me the $20 to get me away from him. My dad looked at me with a look on his face and he said, "You're such a pretty girl. You got such pretty hair." And that's all he said. He never put me down. He never talked about me. But that look on his face, I never saw that look again. From him or my son. I never saw it again. And when I got clean and sober, I went in my dad's house when I got home from church and I spinned around in the living room. He said, "That's my daughter. I got my daughter back." And my kids were so happy. My whole family was very happy when I got clean and sober. Very happy.